Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this interesting learning lab. I hope it's going to be interesting. So my name is Elise Talsma, and I'm opening this session. So today this session is going to be all about the DQQ, about the collection and the analyzing of dietary data using the Diet Quality Questionnaire, a very quick and easy method. And well, today you will learn a lot about it. You will learn exactly what it is, how you can use it, and what kind of indicators you can derive from it. And then on top of that, the exciting part is that you will also learn how to use the data that's already collected for 85 countries. And but before we start, we would also like to know a little bit more about you. And we would also like to tell a little bit about us. So we have a poll and should open more or less now. And then I would like to invite you to answer the questions that are there. So the first question is who you are and what you're currently doing. And what we now see is you are entering it. There are lots of researchers, some students. So we have students, practitioners, and most of you are researchers, some professor instructors, and also some other. Okay, very good. So then the second question about where are you from? So we have participants from Sub-Saharan Africa, a few from the Middle East and Northern Africa, a few from Asia, nobody from Oceania, okay, Europe and North America, and a few from the Caribbean. Good. Now the interesting part is because let's talk about diet quality, right? So your favorite type of food. But what we see there is for most of you, it's fruits. How interesting is that? It's not so strange, yeah? You're interested in diet quality. But then we would also like to know within that type of food. So within the fruits that you mentioned, can you type in the chat what food item it is that you like the most? So your favorite food item, mangosteen, I see watermelon, somebody typed 3. We asked for 1, eh? That's okay. Peach, oranges, berries and avocados. So this question is already a little bit more difficult. You have to go from food group to a food item, yeah? And then thinking about that, and then thinking about what you like for foods and what is mostly consumed in your country, do you consider that your diet quality is healthy, unhealthy, neither or both? And then actually a lot of you said that it's both. It's both healthy and unhealthy. Now that's an interesting question that we like to hear, and today you will hear also more about that. That being said, I'll hand over to Anna. Thank you.
Thanks, Elisa. And I just want to check on, just that in addition to where we're all from and who we are, getting to think a little bit about how we think about what we eat in terms of different food groups and items within food groups that you can actually access in the place where you are and in the season where you are. And then, as Elisa said at the end of the last question, when we're thinking about diet quality, how do we summarize whether it's healthy or unhealthy? There's different aspects of diet quality that we can measure. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, the aspects of diet quality we can measure and how it has been measured in different countries. So this is instead of having slides, I just wanted to take you through the Global Diet Quality Project website, which is at dietquality.org. And here you may have already visited this before, but there's a lot of information here. And one of the most exciting pieces of information is that we have data here now from 85 countries around the world, and we can see in this Explore by Country section, all of the countries in dark blue have diet quality data available from the DQQ, which has been collected in a nationally representative sample in each country, in the population aged 15 and older, the total population, so both men and women, age 15 and older. And this is the first survey, it's the first global survey of diet quality that's ever been done. We have different kinds of information on diet that have been derived from food supply data or household consumption expenditure survey data in some countries, or in some countries that have a national dietary intake survey that the country itself has done, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Some countries have national data, but in terms of a global monitoring effort of actually collecting survey data, asking people what they ate, this is the first time that that has been done. And it has followed in the footsteps sort of the food insecurity experience scale, and how data were collected on food insecurity across countries for the first time starting in 2014. And that was done in a short survey module in the Gallup World Poll. I think I can navigate to the About page to say a little bit more about that. It's summarized here in this bit about how the data were collected and what the data are. So this effort has been a collaboration between Gallup, Harvard, and GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, also with lots of close partners. Wageningen University has been a very close partner in doing a lot of the validation research for the data collection tools. But essentially, the Gallup World Poll has served to be a survey platform where the diet quality questionnaire has been implemented across countries, like how the food insecurity experience scale module was implemented across countries in the Gallup World Poll as well. And due to that experience of the food insecurity being measured across countries in Gallup World Poll, it was able to be elevated into the global monitoring framework of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And now, just a couple of months ago, in April, for the first time, a diet quality indicator has been proposed as an SDG indicator. And it was proposed by a group of countries led by Switzerland and Brazil, Malawi, and Bangladesh, with the support of the UN agencies, to monitor the prevalence of minimum dietary diversity across countries as an SDG2 indicator. And this proposal was possible because now we do have data across countries. And so, again, looking at the map, we have data now on this indicator in all of these countries shown in dark blue. The ones in medium blue, there's data collection underway right now in 2024 that will be added next year. And so it's possible now to be able to monitor diet quality across countries. And this has been because we have tools, the tools that are freely, publicly available for anyone to use. These are the same tools that have been used in the Gallup World Poll. Also, the questions are used in the DHS for measuring minimum dietary diversity for women and for children. We have the diet quality questionnaires, and they're all available for each country where they have been specifically adapted to the country by the great adaptation team that's here in this Learning Lab. And you can click on any country and check out the diet quality questionnaires available. So if we just randomly click on a country, you can see there's a button for download resources, and then the diet quality questionnaires that have actually been used in the Gallup World Poll and other surveys to collect the data are here in English and translated. So if we look at the Nepali version here, you can see the questionnaire itself. And this is what we'll be practicing with today. So you'll get much more familiarity with the questionnaire. and how the questions are structured. They are all yes or no questions about items that were consumed by the respondent, himself or herself, in the previous 24 hours, in the previous day. And so these items are adapted for each country, and using the answers, the yes or no answers to each question, and each question represents a food group, we are able to construct diet quality indicators such as the minimum dietary diversity. And the entire questionnaire takes about 5 minutes to implement, and it and then it's also read the same way each time. So it doesn't involve any special training or probing or other techniques beyond simply reading the questions as they're written. It's fully adapted and ready to use in any survey or any research effort. So we can also see if a country is listed that is one of the 85 where the data have been collected already, we can see the indicators of diet quality show up here on the side. So I'll talk a little bit about the indicators. If you click data, either from this top menu or back on the home screen, if you go to this section and click data, you'll see a list of indicators. So some of these indicators are just about the food groups that were consumed. So you can see each of the food groups grouped in overarching food groups. So we have 3 types of vegetables, or you can look at vegetable consumption overall. We have those grouped by plant source foods, by animal source foods, and by foods to limit. So for example, if we want to click on soft drinks, say, we can see the prevalence of consumption of soft drinks around the world. And there's radio buttons here to look at the total population, the rural population, urban, female, or male. And those can be compared also using tables and graphs where the different radio buttons can be selected to make comparisons. So back in the types of indicators, some of them are just food groups. And then we also have a list of summary indicators. So that includes dietary diversity scores. It includes the minimum dietary diversity for women, which is a dichotomous form of the dietary diversity score. Dietary diversity is a set of 10 food groups, and the score is the number of 10 food groups that have been consumed. The minimum dietary diversity for women is whether at least 5 out of 10 of those food groups have been consumed as a proxy indicator for micronutrient adequacy for women age 15 to 49. Dietary diversity as a score, as it rises, is correlated with increased micronutrient intake and micronutrient adequacy. We also have a summary indicator called all 5, which is whether all 5 food groups that are recommended in most dietary guidelines around the world have been consumed, any amount of the food group. And so you can see here that includes starchy staples, vegetables, fruits, pulses, nuts, or seeds, and animal source foods. So all 5 is an indicator of whether all 5 of those food groups have been consumed based on the yes or no answers of the DQQ. Then we also have indicators related to non-communicable disease risk and protection. So NCD Protect is an indicator that is essentially a count of the number of health protective food groups that have been consumed, mainly coming from these plant source foods that are rich in not only micronutrients, but also antioxidants and elements that protect health against NCDs. And then conversely, NCD risk is a score that's essentially a count of food groups to limit. And food groups to limit here are those which generally have either high added sugars or salts or saturated fat or other elements such as being ultra processed or processed meats, which have associations with cancer. So those food groups are summarized in the NCD risk indicator. The GDR score, it means global dietary recommendations, and it's a combination of NCD protection and avoiding NCD risk factors in the diet. Essentially, it is whether the diets have, to what extent the diets have met global dietary recommendations on healthy diets from the World Health Organization, summarized in a score. And then we have 2 other summary indicators of 0 fruits or vegetables, which is quite an extreme indicator. The prevalence of the population which has not consumed any vegetable or fruit at all in the previous day, and then soft drinks, which we already saw. So for any of these indicators, we can click and see the different subpopulations or the total population, and of all the countries where data have been collected, the prevalence across countries. So that's the main functionality that you can find on the website. You can find the tools, you can find the data, you can find both in any country you might click on. And in addition, there's some other information here. There's reports and publications. If you want to read more about some of the validation work or other aspects of the work, there's a few countries that have posted profiles. And then some previous events and media where even last year's Learning Lab is posted here, as will this year's as well, and some media and blogs and articles. So that is a quick summary of the website. And now I think we will move into the activity using the website to explore and do kind of a scavenger hunt to find different pieces of information. We'll give you some questions and you can look on the website to try to find the answers. So just to show a couple demo questions. The first one, you can enter in the chat. So the first question is, does the country where you are from have diet data or a DQQ available? So if you go to dietquality.org on your computers, first try to look for the answer of whether your country has data or a DQQ, and just type yes or no. I see some people are typing the country that, and someone said a different website. The question here is from DQQ, not different types of diet data, but from DQQ, is there a DQQ adapted and data available? Great. So a lot of people are able to look at the website and find the questionnaire from their country. So again, for the data, you can look at this map. If your country is dark blue, then data has been collected. The latest answer, yes, from Uganda. There we go. And then to answer the question about whether there's a DQQ adapted, you can go to the list of downloadable country adapted tools, DQQs, and find if your country is listed. Great. Okay, so the next demo question is, which country has the lowest prevalence of minimum dietary diversity for women? So which country has the lowest MDDW prevalence? And just type in the chat when you found the answer. I don't see anyone answering yet. I will demonstrate how to find the answer. Yes, okay, we have a winner. The first responses of thank you, everyone. All right, yes, great. Many people have been able to look at the data and navigate to the indicator and find which country has the lowest. It may not be totally obvious from just looking at the map. You can get an idea of where the lighter color shows a lower prevalence, but the answer is obvious when you look at the graph view, and you can go see the prevalence at the end. So Ethiopia is showing up as 24% of women who have had adequate minimum dietary diversity. So we have several other questions for you to answer in small groups. I will stop sharing my screen, and Cecilia Gonzalez will introduce the questions for the group work.
Yeah, so as you can see, those are the questions that everyone is going to be working to answer in your breakout rooms. I'm gonna also share the link to the slide here in the chat for everyone to have them when you go to the breakout room. And so I'm not gonna spend time reading them because you can see them and you'll have access to it. And I know, Alex, you can paste the questions also in the chat, right? And share them with everyone. So we'll have 15 minutes to answer these in your groups, and then we'll come back and debrief together. Yeah, so I'm gonna go question by question. So which countries have the highest whole grain consumption in the world? And feel free to put your answers in the chat. And then if anybody, you can also write in the chat the answer to what staple food items do you think are driving these, or raise your hand if you're willing to, well, actually not for this one, but for the maybe the other questions. If anybody wants to talk about the answer, I'll ask to raise your hand and you can actually verbally answer. So Pakistan, and then, yep, I see Pakistan, Ethiopia, Guatemala. And also, what do you think about, so when you go to the data and click on whole grains, then you can either go through graph view or table view and see the order of the prevalence. And so we see Pakistan, Ethiopia, and Guatemala. And in whole grains, I had to look this up. But, oh, Kendra, I see a hand raised. Go ahead, share.
Sorry, am I okay? I was trying to navigate to the unmute button, but okay. So for this first question, we were like, oh wait, how do you tell that it was a whole grain? Because all the questions are yes or no. So then we went to the questionnaire. So this is why we only got to one question. So then we went to the questionnaire and we saw there are two categories. And luckily, Elisa was in the room with us, and she was like, oh, the second category is the whole grain category. And so then because she was there, we knew that, but maybe for like people who are using it, you could put like whole grain in the parentheses or something like that. And then we were like, you know, how sure are you that the roti, or, you know, that the grains that were whole grains are actually whole grains, you know? But I don't know if we want to talk about that now or later.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We usually, I don't necessarily have an answer, but what I can say is we usually go for whatever the majority of the population might consume. And also, this is an indicator of fiber consumption. And in some countries, and I can speak, for example, for Guatemala, the people were saying that in Guatemala, the tortillas that drive this indicator have a good source of fiber for the population. And since they're a staple, that's why they're there in the whole grain and drive up that indicator. But yeah, but it's not, that one is tricky to find out, actually, I would say, because in some countries, it might not be the same as in other countries, even if it might be the same staple.
Well, I'm sure that I appreciate the work that's gone down into these surveys, and, you know, all the background work behind the scenes. I'm sure it was a lot to figure out the whole grains versus refined grains. But yeah, I was just wondering, like, you know, like roti could be made with a refined grain, or maize could be refined or unrefined, or it could be not whole grain in the flour form. So I was just yeah, wondering, like, when we say whole grains, how. I'm sure you're all pretty confident that it is actually a whole grain, but putting that as part of our
there was,
conversation.
it's a great question, but there was a lot of thought into every single item that was categorized. And so it's correct that in Pakistan and India is very high here as well, that what is driving this is atta, which is whole wheat flour that's used to make chapati roti. And yes, it's possible to make a roti that has refined grains. It's just not very common.
Right.
So you will misclassify some people who've had a refined grain chapati or roti, but most of the people who will say they've had that food are eating a whole grain. And so for a population level indicator, we use the most common form of the food item.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wonder how quickly that would change over time, or, how like often which would like speak to how often these indicators or these questionnaires would have to be updated, but it's, yeah.
And we can go, maybe we'll have a little time to answer some more questions. For the sake of time, I'm gonna move to the second question. So find a map of cheese consumption. What do you notice about cultural diet patterns? So again, when you go to the data, and you can go to different food items, and you go to cheese, then you can see the map. And in this case, I don't know if you have any comments, anyone, as what do you think of any cultural diet patterns when you see, for example, high prevalence of cheese consumption? Franson.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Anna, Cecilia, and all the team for the great presentation and information provided. We appreciate that. My question was in relation to the first question, and I hope that I can still ask it. Is it okay?
Well, why don't we, for now, maybe just move through the different questions briefly, and then if we have some time at the end, we can go back to the question. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Great.
totally fine. Okay, thank you.
Maybe again, just for the sake of time, any thoughts? If you have any thoughts about this specifically, please do share in the chat. And I see we have a lot of questions, so maybe I'm just gonna go quickly through these questions, and then we can spend 5 minutes answering some of those that are in the chat as well. So someone shares, for Nicaragua, 62% cheese is an important protein source, much more consumed than milk. Yep. That's very, very good observation. Any other observation for other countries? For example, I don't, even though I'm from Ecuador, I don't know all the diet details, but I know in Venezuela, for example, people eat a lot of arepas, which have cheese in it, and that's almost a daily food. There's poor cheese consumption in low and middle income countries. Yeah. Great. I'm gonna move to the next one briefly again, just to have time for other questions at the end. So what is the most common type of sweet beverage in India? Did you get the answer to this question? What is the most common sweet beverage in India? Yeah, coffee and tea. And any thoughts on why is it important to see the difference between soft drinks and sweet tea? So when you go to the tools and data, and you go to India, you will see this screen. And when you scroll down to the indicators, you can see in the sweet beverages that in India, 64% of people consumed sweet tea, coffee, or cocoa versus soft drinks, for example, 13%. So any thoughts about the importance? Why is it important to see the difference between the two different types of sweetened beverages? And again, just for the sake of time, just share your thoughts in the chat so that we can go over and then answer some of the other questions people have. So Someone, Victoria says, because the types of sugar added in soft drink is different from that added to tea or coffee. Yeah, someone says because soft drinks are ultra processed. Oh, someone says tea and coffee would provide antioxidants, but soft drinks probably do not. And another answer is the amount of sugar is typically very different. Great.
So these are all great answers. And one other thing that I would add is related to the ultra processing and policy implications of the data, because it may not be realistic to try to set a policy that discourages people from drinking sweet tea, which is a very important part of the food culture. You don't really drink chai without sugar usually. But in a country where the sweet beverages are driven by soft drinks, that is an area for public health intervention that may be more important and realistic, that isn't tied to the traditional culture.
Great answer. So question number 4, which country has the highest consumption of soft drinks? What did you find out about this question? Which country or territory has the highest consumption of soft drinks? And yeah, Palestinian territories, Palestine. And so this data was collected in October 2022. So knowing the current circumstances, what does this tell you about diet monitoring? What does this tell you about the importance of diet monitoring? So yeah, this could have changed given the current situation. So depending on the access to these food items, where they come from, or these beverages, then these would have changed. And these would be the case with a lot of different items and food groups. So it would be important to be able to monitor the changes quickly, and the DQQ provides that easier way to monitor diet quality. Okay, and then
just to emphasize that we selected that because in the Palestinian territories, it's very likely that the entire diet has changed dramatically since the data were collected. So these data you can see were from 2022. From the current situation, you could not say that these data represent the diet in Palestine right now. And if we were to do the survey again right now, we would see that change in diet that's happened due to the situation. And that's why we don't just collect data once, but we can monitor over time.
Yeah. So question number 5, and then I'll try to go faster. So for all 5, what is the prevalence of people consuming all 5 food groups in Yemen, Ukraine, and Bangladesh? So when you go to the website and find the all 5, and in table view, for example, you can search Yemen, and then you'll find it there. And then I went ahead and searched all of them, so you can see the prevalence of all 5 is 23%, about 23%, sorry, in Yemen, Ukraine 18, Bangladesh 18. And then gender differences, we can see, for example, in Yemen, 14% in female, 32% in male, and in Ukraine, 22% in female and 13% in male. So the trends for male and female are reversed. So any thoughts on that? What do you see there with the differences? Well, I guess we already shared, but we can have a discussion on some of the gender differences too for some of these items, and you're able to see that data. And then last one, 0 fruits and vegetables. So in the graph view, the question is, in what country does everyone eat fruits or vegetables? So this indicator tells us that whether the prevalence of people who did not have any fruits and vegetables. And so if you go to the graph view and you go at the bottom, you'll see that Switzerland, in Switzerland, everybody had at least any fruits or vegetables. And also the next question is, what factors can, Namibia, look at urban versus rural. So you can click on urban and rural, and that will add data. And then you can search Namibia, and we see the differences in rural. So 10% versus 17%. So people eat more fruits and vegetables in Namibia, in the rural areas. So the question is here, what factors can influence consumption of fruits and vegetables in urban versus rural settings? So that would raise questions, of why is this different in these two countries. So I'm gonna stop sharing there, and hopefully at the end we have some time to ask some questions. Feel free to put them in the chat, and maybe we can take time to go through them later. Anna, do you think we'll have time for some questions at the end?
I think let's move on to the next activity. And I know there was one question that was asked by multiple people about the question one about whole grains. And just to clarify, really, when we said, what item do you think is driving this? It's really a thought question, because you can't see from the data what are the items people consumed, because the questionnaire is about food groups. So you can see the prevalence consuming a whole grain food group. You can get an idea about the items by going into the questionnaire for that country. In each country, the same questions are for the same food group. So question 2 is always about whole grains. And so you can see the whole grain question for every country. You can see what items were asked about. You cannot see which one of those was actually the most prevalent item, but it will give you some idea. Like if you didn't know anything about Ethiopia, if you've never been there, if you have no idea what Ethiopian food is, you can see from the questionnaire the injera and teff products that are in the whole grain question. So it gives you some idea. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cecilia and Anna, and to everyone for joining us today. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. We've taken a close look at the type of data that's available for 85 countries on dietquality.org. But now we'll take a closer look at the tool itself, the Diet Quality Questionnaire, what we've been calling the DQQ. So what I'll do now is I'll explain briefly how to administer the Diet Quality Questionnaire. Anna showed you a bit on our website, but this is just a reminder that we have the Diet Quality Questionnaire custom built, adapted to over 100 countries. The food items for each country were selected through an inclusive and rigorous process, a consistent process across each country, ensuring that the questionnaire is ready for accurate and consistent data collection in all of these places. The DQQ is a data collection tool. It's designed to be very simple and very easy to use. It should be read exactly as written, so there's no need for additional probing or dialogue. This approach differs from traditional methods of gathering diet quality data, which often require extensive probing and expertise. But with the DQQ, anyone can administer it. You don't need to be a nutritionist, and you don't require special training. The only instruction to use the DQQ is to read the questionnaire exactly as it's written. Like we've mentioned, the DQQ has been adapted for over 100 countries. And this has been done through a labor-intensive process involving key informant interviews with global and national experts all around the world. The tool is not meant to be further adapted or changed. So while suggested changes might seem valid, they often make questions too long. They can misplace items into incorrect food groups or include items consumed in small amounts, which were intentionally excluded. And this takes us to our next topic. Which foods made the cut? Not every food item in a country is included in the DQQ, and this is intentional. Many items are excluded, And this is because they are either unnecessary, consumed in very small amounts, or might be confusing to participants. And the interviews that have taken place at the country level ensured that everyone understood the questions the same way. We firmly resist changing the questions, as it can undo the careful process of excluding items that might overinflate indicators or mislead the participants. The tools aren't perfect. We may have missed some important foods in certain countries. However, we conducted enough interviews with local experts to identify the sentinel foods, ensuring greater accuracy than ad hoc adaptations, which can often lead to inconsistent questions. And now for the structure of the DQQ. So each country's DQQ will include instructions at the very bottom. Instruction number 1 is to just read the questionnaire as written, without any additional dialogue or probing, and more on this can be found on the website. Instruction number 2 is to not change the questions or add or remove any food items from these questions. Modifying the questions inside the DQQ can invalidate them, making it too long or including irrelevant items. We have a license for public use of the DQQ, but it does not allow modifications. And then if you need more information covered by the DQQ, you're free to add your own questions at the end. Many of you might be interested in topics like food safety or the source of food items. Some of you might be interested in specific foods like indigenous, dark green leafy vegetables. And all of these topics are questions that can be tacked onto the DQQ, but only at the end of the questionnaire, so as to not modify the existing structure and questions inside the DQQ. This ensures that the DQQ data remains valid and comparable across different countries and also over time.
I want to jump in with one very important clarification to instruction number 2, which is not to change the items. Just to say that if you find a translation that's wrong, definitely you should correct the translation. There are some languages that nobody on our team speaks, and we couldn't verify the translator's translation of the items into the correct local terms in the language of translation. So there are errors that come up in translation, and this instruction doesn't apply to things that were mistranslated. Definitely, please have the correct translations. Thanks.
Yeah, that's very important. While we don't recommend modifying the questions, we are very open to your inputs and suggestions on the translations that you find on our website. And you can use that contact us feature at the bottom of our site to reach out if you spot any errors. Now we'll take a closer look at the introduction to the DQQ, this short paragraph that appears at the top of each diet quality questionnaire. This introduction helps respondents think about what they ate or drank yesterday. And it's important that they understand the questionnaire easily and have the space to recall their meals. We included prompts about their day, locations, and companions to help jog their memories about food consumption. And this introduction is not meant to be a dialogue or a conversation. Respondents are simply asked to reflect on their day and what they ate or drank in that day. The introduction includes pauses, which are indicated by ellipses, these 3 dots over here. And throughout the introduction, these ellipses prompt respondents to think. They prompt the enumerator to pause and giving time for the respondents to think. Our brains struggle to think and listen simultaneously. So these pauses can be very helpful in giving respondents the room to fully engage and recall that day, which is crucial for the process. For example, think about what you ate in the morning. Think about lunch and who you were with. Then think about dinner. Without these pauses, it might be difficult to think while listening. So besides just reading the questionnaire, there's one additional piece of training, ensuring that you pause. And this allows the introduction to serve its purpose and helps people to recall what they may have eaten yesterday. So now we can just read the introduction quickly, and you'll also do this in your teams when you practice administering the DQQ. At the beginning of each diet quality questionnaire, the interviewer will read, "Now I'd like to ask you some yes or no questions about foods and drinks that you've consumed yesterday during the day or night, whether you had it at home or somewhere else. First, I'd like you to think about yesterday. From the time you woke up through the night, think to yourself about the first thing you ate or drank after you woke up in the morning. Think about where you were when you had any food or drink in the middle of the day. And think about where you were when you had any evening meal. And any food or drink you may have had in the evening or late night. And any other snacks or drinks that you may have had between meals throughout the day or night. I'm interested in whether you had the food items I'll mention, even if they were combined with other foods. Please listen to the list of foods and drinks, and if you ate or drank any one of them, say yes." Another key feature of the DQQ is the STEM questions, and these questions appear throughout the questionnaire. The STEMs say, yesterday, did you eat any of the following vegetables? Yesterday, did you eat any of the following fruits? They help remind respondents to focus on yesterday, and they mentally cue them to think about specific food groups, like fruits, vegetables, or sweets. It's important to read the entire question without pausing after each food. For example, we're asking for a yes or no question to the whole, we're asking for a yes or no answer to the whole question, but not individual foods. You would say, yesterday, did you have papaya, mango, or apricots, instead of pausing after each fruit. And this makes sure that we're asking one cohesive question. And then finally, don't cut the questions short, even if the respondent seems impatient. Completing the entire question prevents respondents from thinking they can rush through by answering yes early on. The format here uses close-ended yes or no answers, which can be circled on paper or ticked on a tablet or device. And we'll take a closer look at how we can do that using the calculator on the website. Zooming in, we see the questions that are meant to be read out loud, and then the responses that can be indicated, yes or no, to each of the close-ended questions. But sometimes a respondent might interrupt with questions like, what do you mean by that item? Or I don't know what ugu is. And this might happen if the item isn't common in their region. Our advice is for the enumerator not to explain the food item or food group. Explaining or elaborating can lead to inconsistency and errors since enumerators aren't trained to explain foods uniformly. Instead, we just recommend that you follow the instruction to simply read the questions out loud. We really can't say this enough. You can read the whole question again and remind the respondent to say yes if they had any of the items, encouraging them to only reply to what they understand. So now that we've taken a deep dive into the DQQ, let's actually get familiar with what these tools are and practice them in small groups. And we'll do that by role-playing within our breakout rooms. So you'll be in groups of 2, and one person will administer the DQQ while the other person answers, and then you'll switch roles to make sure that both people can get some experience with both roles. I'm going to go over some instructions for our breakout room here, and we'll also put these instructions in the chat so that you can have them at your fingertips as you move through the exercise. So we're going to have about 15 minutes to administer the DQQ together in small groups. You can get started by going to dietquality.org. You can even do this right now, just to make sure that you have access and that you have this website pulled up and available within reach while you run the exercise. Dietquality.org is where you can pick your country and download the DQQ for your selected country. We recommend you pick either your home country or your country of residence. And if you can't find either, for example, if you're in one of these Central European countries, then we recommend choosing a country you've been to or one that you're interested in. Once you've selected your country, you can click on that country inside the tools page on the Diet Quality website. So you'd click on tools once you land in dietquality.org, and then you click on your country of choice. Once you get there, you'll see the option to download the resources. And in clicking this, you'll have access to the diet quality questionnaire for that country. And once you have that questionnaire pulled up, you'll administer the DQQ. So in groups of 2, you'll work with your partner and take turns administering the questionnaire, answering yes or no to each of the questions that you're being asked. And we ask that you record your answers on the website using radio buttons. I'll take you through this in just a moment here. But the purpose of recording your answers is so that you can calculate indicators from the data. And you can also get a sense of how these indicators calculate as you go along or go down the questionnaire. So quickly here, I'll just show you how this works. Once you land on the Diet Quality website, you'll go to Tools. And this is where you can scroll down and pick your country of choice. And then you'll click Download Resources. And once you do this, you'll see some links in a Google Drive that you can click on and expand to view the diet quality questionnaire for that country, with many translations also available. Next, to log your answers on the site, you'll also click on Tools here, but instead of scrolling down, you'll click on Use Indicator Calculator. And here, you can scroll down to this section where you see the radio buttons. So in clicking them, you'll notice how some of these indicators may begin to build. Finally, there are some special cases that we want to draw your attention to. In a couple of the questions, you'll notice that there may be multiple questions within your DQQ of choice. Let me give you an example of this. Okay, here we are. So here in Vietnam, you'll notice that questions 6 and 7 have multiple parts to them. And these are for some of the food groups that may have extensive sentinel foods, dark green leafy vegetables, other vegetables, fruits. And in these cases, you'll click yes in this radio button if any of the question parts have received a yes from your participant. So in Vietnam, we have 2 questions for 6, 3 for 7. You may not have this case in the DQQ that you pick, but in case you do, just be mindful with the radio buttons, you'll pick yes or no, depending on whether any of the parts have received that answer. And finally, you'll switch roles and repeat it, keeping the radio button page open on each of your sides so that we can run a quick exercise at the end and compare the indicators that we've gotten. So I'll put the instructions into the chat here, and we'll break out into our rooms. We'll do groups of 2 for the purposes of this activity, but if for some reason you end up in a room by yourself, feel free to just join us back in the main plenary and we'll put you in a different one. Alternatively, if you end up in a room alone and you prefer to work alone, you can simply self-administer the DQQ using the radio buttons on the site. We'll jump in and out of the rooms to make sure you have everything you need, but go right ahead and head to dietquality.org, and Alex here will help break us out into our rooms.
Now, yes. Yeah, so basically what I was trying to say is that in some cases, the question would be about, just to say something, just to give an example, would be about whether you have eaten chocolates, candy, and things like that. But I remember that I ate only a very, very small portion of chocolate. So I had to say yes. In other cases, it would be like whether you ate rice, I don't know, rice, maize and things like that. And the quantity I ate in terms of rice would be far, it would be a big amount, a big portion. So the quantity can vary a lot from one question to another, and depending also on the item and so on. So that is that is one of the observation I feel that may not have been captured as we respond the questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great point. So the questionnaire absolutely does not capture quantities. That is very important in the feasibility of this questionnaire, because if you start to collect data on quantities, it is no longer scalable. And we know that because that's why a diet survey has never been done before, because methodologies that use quantitative assessment, dietary assessment, are very labor intensive and very expensive. And they have been done in some countries, but for example, only 3 countries in Africa have ever done that kind of survey. So the jump between asking about a food group and asking about its quantity is enormous. And so we don't ask about quantities. And the way the indicators are constructed, we actually don't need to ask about quantities. The concept behind the minimum dietary diversity indicator, for example, is that even without asking quantities, even just did you consume any amount of the food group, you can have a validated indicator of micronutrient adequacy. It's quite remarkable. Just by knowing if you had any of those food groups, and if you had 5 out of 10, if you're a woman, that you were more likely to have consumed adequate micronutrients. And the same goes for sweets, that if you've consumed at least 2 out of the 5 sweet and food and beverages, you're more likely to have exceeded the recommendation of WHO on sugar. And this will misclassify some individuals. It's why we don't use it as an indicator for individual clinical assessment. But at a population level, the misclassification balances out. So if you had a very small chocolate, maybe you didn't exceed the sugar recommendation, but maybe someone else had, a really large amount of chocolate or ice cream or something like that. And so at a population level, the indicators do work well. They are validated for population level indicators of the various components of diet quality, whether it's nutrients or sugar or meeting other WHO recommendations, just dependent on the food group alone. So thanks for bringing that up, because it's a really important aspect of how the questionnaire actually works to provide useful information.
Fantastic. Well, first, yeah, thank you, Anna. Yes, I think we've all seen, like, the DQQ is a fantastic tool for collecting population understanding on diet quality, and as Christina highlighted regarding it being a collection that's normally done it's an enumerated data collection. So what we've been working on recently is whether we can actually do a self-administered collection. So that would actually obviously facilitate more high-frequency collections if we can kind of, interact with people more directly to see whether we can actually collect, higher frequency data, and whether this could actually support, a lower cost data collection. So what we've actually been doing over the past few years is looking at whether we can deploy the DQQ via a basic or a feature phone. So in Rwanda, over the past 3 years, we've developed a system using something called USSD, which is a very basic system, which is kind of similar to SMS, where you can actually send the DQQ directly to a respondent or a population group and get them to respond to the DQQs themselves. So this is an example of the system via feature phone, so via basic phone. So although I'm presenting the results on a smartphone, this would work on the most basic of phones. And yeah, as I said, it's, as Anna has suggested, we're actually, along with Elise, who's also who introduced the session, have actually attempted to actually validate this work, and have found that a self-administered collection is marginally less accurate than a administered data collection using a weighed food record as kind of a really accurate measure of diet quality and recall, but also the modality of data collection is also fairly robust as well. So kind of self-administration versus enumerator administration is a really nice opportunity to collect the data. So in Rwanda, we've done this over multiple weeks, collecting almost 100,000 responses. Using a USSD approach, but also in Guatemala, we're also deploying via WhatsApp. So this is a really cool way of doing it in an environment where smartphones are more available and more accessible. So this is a really, what we're finding is a really low cost opportunity for collecting high frequency data on the DQQ, and allows us to kind of address those questions of, okay, whether things are changing seasonally, temporally, and geographically across space and time. So yeah, that's pretty much this work. And yeah, this is all potentially for wider usage on WhatsApp and other features as well. So I'll hand that.
Reese, could I ask you to just repeat the main finding? Because your audio was a challenge when you were talking about the main finding. So when you were talking about whether the self-administered modality is as valid as enumerator administered, and if it's a viable option compared to a weighed food record.
Yeah, apologies. Rural internet in the UK is terrible, so I apologize for this. So yeah, so the self-administered collection is a valid modality for collecting the DQQ. And also we found that the DQQ itself via enumerated collection is a valid and highly reliable method for recall for collecting diet quality data compared to a weighed food record, an enumerated or an observed weighed food record. So yeah, super cool to do this, to validate multi modalities, and once again reinforce the validity of the DQQ as a data collection tool as well.
Thanks so much, Reese. And Elisa, I don't know if you want to add anything to the description about the validation study, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, no, Reese covered it all. I think it's an interesting method, and we will explore it more in research to come and how we can use it.
Yeah. So yeah, and in addition to the validation of the against a weighed food record in Rwanda, we've also done validation studies in 3 other countries. Chris Villano led one in Solomon Islands, and the Wageningen team was very involved in Ethiopia and Vietnam. And that paper of the validation work is available on the publications tab of the website if you want to read it. And so we're coming to the end of the session. Before we close, I also wanted to introduce on sort of outgrowth of the questionnaires that have been adapted. As Christina covered, it was really a huge global team effort to adapt these questionnaires. About 1,000 people worldwide contributed in an interview of the most common food items in their particular country and context, so that we could have, like, our adaptation team didn't come up with the foods for each country. We rather gathered information from people in each country to find out what are the most common food items in each place. So it's been a huge effort driven by key informant input, and our role in the global team was to ensure consistency. in what types of food items were included or excluded across settings. So what has come of that actually is a comprehensive map of the most common food items in each country, where we have had a process to identify those most common items in the DQQ. So you can see in the World Food Map, you can find it at worldfoodmap.org. We have all of the food groups of the DQQ plus insects, and you can find various very interesting pieces of information on this map about the most common items. So, for example, you can find in each country how many items are even in the DQQ. You can see here the DQQ, even though it's 29 food groups and Sentinel foods only, we do cover quite a high number of food items within that 5-minute questionnaire. And you can see the the most commonly consumed items in different countries. So, for example, if you wanted to look at insects, which we didn't, we don't include it in the main DQQ, but it is used in the questionnaires that our DHS uses for women, and also the infant and young child feeding questionnaire has information on insects as a different food group. So you can see the insects that are most commonly consumed in different countries, or you can see, the types of whole grain foods. We looked at that. So this would have been actually a quicker way to find those whole grain items than looking up each DQQ. You can go to worldfoodmap.org and simply hover over a country and find the items that are most common for each food group. You can also look at, for example, a food item. So if you're interested in, say, for example, you can look at the different kinds of dark green leafy vegetables that are consumed around the world that have been identified as common in at least one country. And if you wanted to click on one of these and see in which countries is this item consumed, we're in the process of adding more photos. So some of the items have photos and some of them don't yet. But if you just wanted to click on an item, pumpkin leaves is quite common, and it showed up as a common food in 32 countries. So if we were to click on that, we can see what are those countries where pumpkin leaves is one of the most commonly consumed dark green leafy vegetables. So the World Food Map offers a view into food culture that has come from all of those 1,000 key informants around the world to identify the most common items in each country, in each food group. Chris Williano will be working a lot on this in the next phase, which is based at Wageningen, to expand the functionality of this World Food Map. This is sort of a beta version, which really just maps out the foods from the DQQ. But we'll be able to add things like, let's see. So if we have some basic information here, the plant family, the countries where the food item is common. We have this section here where we're going to be able to add food composition data from the Periodic Table of Food Initiative when it becomes available, and sort of build out the information about all these different food items around the world. Chris, if you'd like to say anything else in a couple minutes before we move to close, feel free.
Yeah, no, you covered it well, and we're really excited about the next phase of the World Food Map, and it will include many underutilized indigenous species that are both nutrient dense and climate resilient. And we're going to aim to map them across not just country borders, but agroecological zones as well. So stay tuned for that. This should be a really exciting project. Thank you.
Thanks. So we have just a few minutes left. Elisa, I think you have some closing questions, and if there are any other burning questions that didn't get answered We don't want to leave you, have you leave the workshop saying you really didn't understand a particular thing. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand.
Or type it in the chat, and then we can, because we have a few more minutes. Yeah, so a lot of thank yous in the chat, which is always a good sign. That being said, then Anna, then I think it's good that we. Oh, there's a question about mango. There's no mango for Zambia, but it's common. Okay.
Oh, okay. So this is, you will see mango in the Zambia DQQ for sure. And this is why the World Food Map is beta right now, because there's some issues in compiling names. My guess is that in Zambia, it's probably called ripe mango. And so when the word ripe mango is there and then mango is in other countries, we're still working on integrating those names so that the same items are always called the same thing. So that may be the issue behind that, and other items as well.
Good, good. Now then in the chat, there's also a short questionnaire is being loaded. So please take the time to fill it in. I want to thank you all for being here. And you've learned a lot, hopefully, about what a DQQ actually is, what are the indicators, where you can find the tools on the website. And there's also a very important place on the website that is contact us. So if you have any questions, you can use that. So go to that place, fill in your email, and you will be, you can enter your question there, and we will do our best to answer this. So in the questionnaire that we now have for you, the exit poll. So we would like to hear from you what you now, let me pull up the questions. So what do you think was most surprising in this session? And what was difficult on the website? What was the hardest tools to find? Yeah, and now you know a little bit more about the website and about the DQQ. How will you intend to use it? And then what kind of work? So we're very interested to hear from you about that.